Hello and welcome back to yet another exciting, marvelous video. Why would two factions that share a lot in common with each other become sworn enemies? What could be the reason behind such deep-rooted hatred that anytime they come face to face, they try to kill each other on sight? Well, in today's video, these are the mysteries that we're going to explore about the alien and predator species. You might think they'd be friends since they're not from our world, but they hate each other more than you hate your job. Their history dates back several decades, and despite all the fighting, it's truly amazing to see the aliens and predators together. So in today's video, we're going to travel back in time and discover how their rivalry began. But before we can get into our exploration, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small click for you, but to us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's dive right in. Origins of the alien versus predator concept. In 1979, we were first introduced to the deadly extraterrestrial creatures known as the aliens or xenomorphs. Ridley Scott's Aliens served as a great foundation and building block for the franchise. A sequel was released in 1986 known as Aliens, which was soon about to meet a competitor. Just a year later, in 1987, the film industry saw the beginning of another franchise centered around a skilled extraterrestrial species known as predators. Now, apart from both franchises being an incredible blend of sci-fi and horror, they also share a few other things in common. The most obvious similarity is that both the aliens and the predators are deadly extraterrestrial species. They're also in conflict with the human survivors or humanity in general. Apart from that, there's also the looming themes of survival, military involvement, and some pretty advanced technology. Clearly, what made them enemies were the differences between both species, but before we get into the what and how of their conflict, let's take a look at when exactly the two franchises came together. In the late 80s, Dark Horse Comics, an American comic book publisher, held separate licenses for the Aliens and Predator comics. One day, a meeting took place between the executives and writers at Dark Horse. The purpose of this meeting was to come up with the idea for a crossover event with DC Comics, but discussions took a turn, and the crossover idea was changed to the comic lines that the publication owned rather than tying any knots with DC. The writer and editor for Dark Horse, Chris Warner, is the man behind the genius idea of the Aliens vs. Predator franchise. He suggested that perhaps they should create a comic book crossover line between the xenomorphs and the Yautja. As a result of Warner's idea, from November 1989 to January 1990, a three-part story was published in the anthology series of the publication known as Dark Horse Presents. It ran in Volume 1 as issues 34 to 36. Initially, it was released in black and white and was the first comic book in the comic series of Aliens vs. Predator. In fact, not only that, but it's also the first ever story to exist in the entire Aliens vs. Predator franchise. Randy Stradley, the man who had been an executive at Dark Horse for 35 years, wrote the story, and it was penciled by Phil Norwood, lettered by Pat Brosseau, and inked by Carl Story. These men clearly made history when they created this three-part short story. The story in the first two issues, that is 34 and 35, served as the primary stage before the alien races actually met. It outlined the events that would lead up to their rivalry. That's why these issues are simply billed as Aliens and Predator. In the last installment, issue 36, we saw the title Aliens vs. Predator for the very first time. It's also the first issue that had both creatures on its cover page, and the art was done by Chris Warner. The anticipation that Dark Horse created around issue 36 was truly phenomenal. In the new Aliens vs. Predator comic line that was being made, this short story eventually became a prequel and led to the publication of a 4-issue limited series that was also written by Randy Stradley and released in 1990. Now, let's take a look at how exactly the two deadly alien races crossed paths with each other. The Aliens vs. Predator conflict in the comic books. In the three-part short story, we're taken to outer space and into the Lecter, the commercial transport vessel that is being piloted by Scott Conover and Tom Strandberg. Now, through all the things that we see, the only dialogue we hear is from the two pilots having a deep conversation. They're discussing the state of their world, Earth, and whether nature is more important than technology or not, and a bunch of other such philosophical topics. In the midst of their conversation, a spaceship is spotted outside. Our pilots think that it's just a meteor, but it's actually a Predator mothership. When we get to take a look inside the mothership, instead of meeting the predator race, we see someone being held captive. And to everyone's surprise, it's a xenomorph queen. She's being held captive in order to harvest xenomorph eggs. Now, the predators need these eggs so they can use them as part of their hunt. The Yautja, or predator race, considers the concept of hunting a rite of passage or an initiation into their clan. This hunt only involves the hunting of dangerous organisms that are considered to be on equal footing with the Yautja, or more powerful than them, as long as they pose any sort of threat. Amongst the ranks of the Yautja, there are unblooded Yautja who come even below the young Yautja. These unblooded predators are young and highly inexperienced when it comes to hunting, so certain hunts are specifically created to provide them with enough experience so they can improve their skills and become better hunters. The predators were gathering the eggs in the seeding pod known as the Lou de Te Calais. This pod will be used to disperse the xenomorph eggs on a planet of their choosing, which will serve as the hunting ground. Now, in the midst of this, we meet the leader of the hunting party, who's known as Broken Tusk. He's getting ready for the hunt when some of his subordinates arrive to give him some news. Apparently, another predator, known as Topknot, got into a fight over the right to choose the planet where they would execute their hunt. He won that fight. This left Broken Tusk enraged, and he decided to challenge Topknot to a fight with him, knowing full well that he's more powerful, and, as you might expect, Broken Tusk crushed Topknot in the battle and won. Eventually, Broken Tusk decided they would execute the hunt on the planet Ryushi, which is a desert located in the Beta Cygni system, a binary star system within the Milky Way galaxy. Now, at the time of choosing, he didn't know that a colony of humans known as Prosperity Wells had made this planet their home. At the same time, we also see that Topknot, who still wants to lead some of the unblooded predators, gathers some of them and executes a hunt on a marsh-covered planet. Towards the end of issue 36, we see that Topknot's crew has had a successful hunt, and he bloods one of the young Yautja, which is basically an initiation ritual into adulthood. The next 4 issues that were released in 1990 continue the story on the planet Ryushi. The Lecter that was seen at the beginning of issue 34 finally starts to make sense to us. It's carrying some livestock shipments for the colony of Prosperity Wells, and all its residents are eagerly awaiting the spaceship's arrival. Soon, their long-range scanners detect something, but it's not the Lecter. In fact, it's the seeding pod of the predators that has started laying eggs all over the desert for the hunt. However, the personnel of the ranch think that it's probably just a meteor, and the matter is quickly dismissed. After a short while, the Lecter reaches Ryushi's orbit, and at the same time, the hunting party of several predators led by Broken Tusk make their landing on the planet. Eventually, towards the end of the day, 2 workers named Explaiend and Miss Roth were roaming outside when they stumbled upon something strange. What they discovered was a large number of dazed rynths, rhinoceros-like livestock animals, as well as several dead facehuggers. These are sort of like stage 1 xenomorphs who are in their parasite form, and they're the second stage of their overall life cycle, but the fact that they were dead clearly meant that the first day of the hunt for the Yautja was a success. But none of the residents of Prosperity Wells knew anything about it. This colony also has a doctor named Kisar Revna, so they decide to take the dead facehuggers to the doctor for further inspection. They also wanted to avoid causing a quarantine, so they lied to the doctor and told him that the facehuggers were found in the Iwa Gorge region. The townspeople were having a party in honor of the Lecter arriving safely and their first successful Rynth export to Earth. At the same time, Dr. Revna is examining the facehuggers. He realizes that he needs more specimen samples, so he decides to head out to Iwa Gorge to find some of the creatures. Just as he reaches the area, instead of finding any specimens, he ends up discovering the space shuttle of the predators, and to make matters worse, the hunters spot him. So he tries to run for his life using his Yamaha hoverbike, but he loses control of it. Instead of escaping, he ends up first crashing into Broken Tusk, and then into the shuttle. The result of this little mistake is an explosion. The Yautja no longer have their shuttle since it blew apart. On top of that, due to Dr. Revna's bike, even Broken Tusk is injured and doesn't wake up, so the remaining predators realize that the human being in front of them is the reason behind their sudden predicament. And so, humanity is labeled as their sworn enemy and they declare war. Meanwhile, back at the residence area, we once again meet Machiko Noguchi, one of the most important people in Prosperity Wells. Just a little while before the arrival of the predators, she took up the position of the administrator in charge of the colony. She's in her office and is approached by one of the pilots of the Lecter, Scott. He apparently tries to pursue her in a not-so-gentlemanly way, and she reacts by pushing him away into a wall. The other co-pilot, Tom, realizes what has happened and asks for forgiveness for his friend's actions. He then proceeds to take Scott with him to go back to the Lector, but another mystery awaits them since their precious spaceship has been taken over by the Xenomorph Queen, and they have also built a hive for themselves. Soon after arriving, they're taken captive by the swarm of Xenomorphs. The next day, Machiko realizes that Dr. Revna has apparently gone missing, which is rather strange since something like this has never happened on their colony. Upon speaking with his wife, Miriam Revna, they find out that he was inspecting the facehuggers that Explaiend and Roth had brought. So, Hiroki and Machiko decide to send out a search party for him. The pilots of Copter 1, David Spanner and Ashley Aikita, are given the task to go to Iwa Gorge and look for Dr. Revna, as that's his last known location. Upon arriving, Ashley and David are shocked to see that there are broken parts and remains of a space shuttle that they have no knowledge of. Obviously, it's the shuttle of the Yautja. They also find an unusual-looking, scary creature, Broken Tusk, who's unconscious. So, as any good colonist would do, they carried him in their aircraft to take him back to their base of operations. They didn't know that they weren't the only ones returning to the colony. When they left the site, the hunting party of predators saw their aircraft, and since they had declared humans their enemies, they decided to follow Copter 1. As they make their way through the desert, they find a bunch of humans and decide to attack them. It was a happy family of 4. Mom, Dad, their child, Bobby Sheldon, and the dog. The family wasn't prepared for an attack by creatures they had never seen before, so Bobby's entire family gets killed right in front of his eyes. In fact, if he had slowed down by even a fraction of a second, he too would be dead. Luckily, he was able to flee on a hoverbike. Back at the base, Machiko had realized that Miss Roth had lied to their doctor about the location of the facehuggers. She tries to defend herself by explaining that she was just following orders from Mr. Explaiend. Explaiend also tries to defend himself, but Machiko and Hiroki give him an earful. Now at this point, it's important to remember that none of them know that the Lector has been hijacked by Xenomorphs. After this discussion, they realize that the Lector has not left their orbit with its first load yet. No one's able to contact them, so Machiko decides to send Collins to speak to them in person. Then, they head to the med center to check whether Broken Tusk has woken up. Just then, Bobby Sheldon finally reaches town and crashes his hoverbike. Since he's heavily injured, he is also brought into the med center. Upon seeing Broken Tusk, he gets scared and starts yelling, "Monsters, monsters!" After all, some very similar creatures just killed his family. As a result of all these events, Machiko sends Aikita to check out the ranch of the Sheldons. She then relocates all the townspeople into the main complex, as it's clear that these creatures can attack at any time. Then, using cargo containers, Prosperity Wells is barricaded from all sides to ensure maximum security. Machiko soon finds out that Collins hasn't returned from the Lector. She senses that something is going horribly wrong on their planet, so she takes a service pistol from Hiroki, along with some scatterguns, and, accompanied by the copter pilots Mason and Riley, goes to the Lector. When Mason sees the door to the Lector open, he goes inside to investigate, but the Xenomorphs immediately get a hold of him. Then, they come outside and start attacking Machiko. She tries to shoot at them as much as she can, but they're bigger, more in number, and they just keep coming back like giant cockroaches. Surprisingly, someone comes to the rescue. From above her head, one of the unblooded Yautja jumped and started attacking the Xenomorphs. She then immediately identifies the Yautja as someone who has a close resemblance to human beings and samurai. She calls the Predator a hulking humanoid warrior, and their enemies are labeled as silent, eyeless monsters. This is actually the first time we get to see the Xenomorphs in action proper. Anyways, pretty soon, the Yautja is easily overpowered and killed. Machiko runs away and contacts Hiroki. This is when she realizes that her colony's in trouble since the predators have attacked them. Hiroki decides to take some of the security team with him and try to hold back the attack so that Machiko can alert the townspeople and take action. Upon arrival, she orders them to shut all the doors except the east block and declares a lockdown. No one comes in or out. As she's watching through the cameras, the entire security personnel, along with Hiroki, are killed. Before she even has time to mourn them, she sees that their attackers are enjoying themselves by having a victory bonfire. Machiko gets consumed with anger and prepares herself to head out alone into battle. She then meets Miriam, Dr. Revna's wife, and gives her a semi-automatic shotgun in case something goes wrong. She also has a sudden realization that perhaps some of the Rinth were infected or impregnated with xenomorph eggs. Ultimately, her conclusion is that these two creatures are somehow connected. Sometime after, she leaves to go to the Lector. Miriam hears Machiko's voice, so she opens the door, but instead of her friend, it turns out to be one of the predators who then starts attacking her. This is the first time we learn of the voice impersonation skills of the predators. Incidentally, Broken Tusk manages to free one of his arms from the restraints and uses a weapon to injure the predator. Just then, Machiko arrives on her hover bike and slams it into the creature. Miriam realizes that the creature in their captivity might be grateful to them since he saved her from his own kind, so she frees him and leaves with Machiko in the copter. Meanwhile, we see Broken Tusk fighting the Unblooded. He's obviously stronger and ends up killing the young Yautja. At the same time, Machiko has received information that a war is apparently taking place outside their colony. Any guesses who this war is between? It's obviously aliens versus predators. A bunch of Yautja are fighting the xenomorphs that arrived at the location from the Lecter. Through this part of the story, it's clear that there can be several reasons behind their rivalry. The xenomorphs obviously hate the Yautja since they abducted their queen. Similarly, the Yautja also hate the eyeless creatures since they consider them to be as powerful as they are. It's a fight for protection, for dominance, and for territory. Machiko releases the uninfected and trapped livestock, and we see an amazing stampede of the Rinth as they end up killing several aliens and predators. At this point, Broken Tusk was also on site, but he managed to save himself from the stampede by climbing up a tower. Eventually, in an attempt to save Broken Tusk, Machiko and Miriam's copter crashes onto the ground and Miriam dies. The Lecter pilots, Tom and Scott, have also arrived on the scene. Together, Machiko, the pilots, and Broken Tusk head back to the east lock of the colony to wait for the Marines to arrive, but it's soon revealed that no help will come their way. Instead, they have new instructions to preserve the xenomorphs now that all the predators are dead, except for Broken Tusk. Just then, another horrific revelation takes place when Tom starts experiencing painful contractions in his body. Apparently, he was impregnated and soon gave birth to a chestburster, which is basically a stage 2 xenomorph implanted inside the chest of a host by a facehugger. And we all know the planet has been swarming with those little buggers. The colony is still in grave danger, especially since the Queen is still on the Lecter. After mercy killing Scott, since he was also impregnated, Machiko decides to crash the Lecter's orbital barge onto the complex to destroy the hive. With the help of Broken Tusk, Machiko is able to activate the barge and attempts to escape using the emergency escape pod. But they're attacked by the Queen. The xenomorph tries to enter the escape pod, but Broken Tusk chops off its hand, and when the pod doors close, it dies due to decapitation. Towards the end of the story, the entire colony has been destroyed due to the barge clash. It also manages to kill all the remaining xenomorphs. The two remaining survivors, Machiko and Broken Tusk, were able to escape, and just before dying due to his grave injuries, Broken Tusk bloods Machiko. Now, that's what we call an ending. I mean, it's emotional in every sense. Whether you feel sorry for the xenomorphs, the Yautja, or the humans, it's all justified. As a result of the original Aliens vs. Predator comic series, an entire franchise soon began to emerge. Subsequently, there were other limited comic series, short stories, one-shots, video games, and much more. The same year that the original comics were released, the AVP franchise also hinted at becoming a part of the film industry through the film Predator 2. So let's take a look at just how their story panned out on the big screen. The Alien vs. Predator movies. The conflict on the big screen. By the time the comics released the first ever story for the Alien vs. Predator franchise, combined, we had already had 3 movies in the separate franchises of Aliens and Predator. The first Alien was released in 1979, followed by Aliens in 86 and Predator in 87. Towards the end of the film Predator 2, which was released in 1990, we realized that we'll get to see the gigantic and frightening fight between the two franchises on the silver screen. LAPD officer Lieutenant Mike Harrigan snuck aboard the Predator ship for a little investigation during that move. When he was examining the wall of skull trophies inside the ship, if you look carefully, you'll see that there was a xenomorph head from the Aliens films. And this very scene sparked a surge of excitement inside the hearts of fans of both franchises. It wasn't until 2004 that we finally got the first film, Alien vs. Predator, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Film opens with a satellite detecting a mysterious heat bloom beneath Buvatoya, an island off Antarctica. Billionaire Charles Bishop Wayland assembles a team of archaeologists, scientists, and mercenaries, including expert guide Alexa Woods, to conduct the investigation. At the same time, we can see a Predator ship entering Earth's orbit as they have also picked up on the heat bloom. Well, they didn't exactly pick up on it. In fact, they were the ones who set it as a trap to lure in some humans. Eventually, as the team's investigation proceeds, they discover an ancient pyramid buried deep beneath the ice. They soon realize that it looks like a sacrificial chamber with several human skeletons scattered all over the place. What they don't know is that this is a hunting ground where predators hunt the ultimate prey. the aliens, also known as xenomorphs, as their rite of passage. At this point, you must have already realized that the film doesn't entirely follow all the events that take place in the original comic book series. The screenplay was written by Anderson and Shane Salerno. Although it's Anderson's original story, it also draws influence from the comic book series, Aztec mythology, and the writings of Erich von Däniken, a Swiss author. Now, as the team continues their exploration, they accidentally trigger the awakening of the imprisoned alien queen. At this point, several young predators have also made landfall above the surface and killed the members of the team who had not entered the pyramid. Similar to the comics, the queen begins to lay eggs continuously, which leads to several humans getting impregnated by facehuggers. They also give birth to the chestbursters, who turn into adult aliens pretty fast. Soon enough, the predators arrive, and the human beings get caught in the middle of a deadly battle. Several of them die, and some of the remaining ones are taken by the aliens to turn them into their host bodies to produce more of the creatures. It's horrifying and awful, and exactly what we would expect from the xenomorphs. During the first battle between the aliens and the predators, the alpha alien, known as Grid, manages to kill one of the predators, Chopper. Grid then engages in a battle against Celtic the Predator, and although it turns out to be an interesting fight, the xenomorph wins. Eventually, there's only a single predator left alive, Scar. As the story progresses, all the other humans are killed and Alex is left alone. When Alex kills an alien in front of Scar, he's somehow impressed by her, and the two form an alliance for survival. They later use Scar's self-destruct device to kill all the aliens inside the pyramid and escape, but just like them, the queen alien had also managed to escape and attacks them. However, together, the two manage to defeat her after a scary fight. Then, just like what happened with Machiko in the comics, Scar bloods Alex as a sign of her becoming a warrior, and then dies. Towards the end of the film, we see a twist in the story. Another Predator ship has arrived to take the dead body of Scar, but when they're in space, a Pred-alien chestburster comes out of Scar's body. 3 years later, in 2007, we received a sequel for the film, which is known as Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, and is directed by the brothers Strauss. This film shows us the aftermath of what happened due to the birth of a Pred-alien. It picks up where the 2004 film left off, showing us a creature that's a hybrid of the xenomorph and Yautja. It quickly develops into an adult and starts massacring all the predators on the ship. As a result, the ship crashes into a forest right outside of Gunnison, Colorado. This causes the Pred-alien and the facehuggers to escape. They soon start infecting humans in order to spawn a new hive of xenomorphs. Meanwhile, the Predator homeworld detects the outbreak on Earth and dispatches a lone predator, known as Wolf, to clean up the infestation and stop the aliens from spreading. Upon arriving in Gunnison, Wolf uses the advanced weaponry and technology of the Predators and begins hunting the aliens. At the same time, he also uses a blue liquid to get rid of any traces of the xenomorph's presence on Earth. Eventually, as things progress, several townspeople in Gunnison begin to notice the sudden disappearances. A search party is sent out, during which the humans encounter Wolf. So, in order to maintain the secrecy of the predators, he kills some of them and runs away. In the sewers, he comes across several fully grown xenomorphs and engages in a fight with them. This fight doesn't end in the sewers, though, and when they come up to the surface, several xenomorphs run further into the town. Meanwhile, the Pred-alien has found his next victim in a woman named Carrie, who works as a waitress. It appears the town is slowly being engulfed by the fight between the Predator Wolf and the swarm of xenomorphs. The aliens are attacking any and every human that comes their way. In fact, they've decided to make this town on Earth their home ground. They created their hive inside the town hospital, where the Pred-alien is using pregnant women to implant belly bursters in them. Soon after, Wolf also arrives at the hospital, and during yet another battle between the two creatures, humans are trapped and killed. Luckily, some of them manage to escape using the hospital's helicopter. The ultimate battle of the film takes place between Wolf and the Pred-alien. Both creatures are using all their powers and strength to kill one another. In fact, after several blows here and there, they manage to fatally wound each other, but that's not what causes their death. Apparently, the military has decided to execute a nuclear strike on the entire town. This action results in the deaths of some of the townspeople who'd survived. It also ends up killing Wolf, the Pred-alien, and all the xenomorphs. Marvelous verdict! Well guys, with that, we've come to the end of yet another marvelous video. The many battles between the aliens and the predators have kept us company for a long time. In fact, the day the idea to create an entire franchise out of this crossover was conceived might have been the best day in my personal history. After all, it led to so many other crossovers in different comic book universes taking place. The entire Aliens vs. Predator franchise gained so much traction over the years that people couldn't stop writing stories about it. As a result, we got to experience so many other comic book stories, as well as novels like AVP, Hunter's Planet, AVP War, AVP Armageddon, and even board and video games that were developed by Ask Kodansha. So, which storyline about the aliens and the predators do you like the most? Do you prefer one over the other? Could there ever come a time when you think the two factions might work together? And what else from the universe of aliens and predators would you like us to explore? Let us know about it in the comments down below, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. It means the world to us when you help us grow. And until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.